So, commission review time. Now, as was the case last year, I had someone commission me for an entire year's worth of reviews, um, one review per month. And last year was all very much themed around 70s and 80s comedies. This year, it was still 70s and 80s stuff, but the theming was a bit more along the line of satirical, like a little bit funny, but like satirical work. Um, Commentary, political things, sort of grappling with the issues of the day. A lot more heavy stuff, especially towards the tail end. And the last month was given to me as a free space for me to pick anything from the 80s that I wanted to do. Now, obviously, the thing that makes the most sense is to pick a movie that fits the overall themes that this year of commissions has been. But I didn't want to do that, so I just watched Time Bandits again. I hadn't seen this movie in a while, and yes, I will say right at the front, yes, problematic people involved in it at multiple levels. Terry Gilliam, the director of this, has turned out to be a real piece of garbage, and John Cleese only slightly less so. And also, Sean Connery, who was always a piece of garbage, but he's also dead, so... And I'm aware of all that. So like this is a case of I actually already had this movie on DVD. That's not how I watched it. I got a free week trial of something and then canceled it as soon as I watched the thing. So like I didn't pay for this regardless. So I am aware of those issues. I'm not going to deal with them. I just let me just talk about the movie. Okay? You don't have to bring it to my attention. I know. So Time Bandits was Terry Gilliam's 1981 movie. It was a pretty decent hit for what it was. It is an oddball film that I could really only see getting successfully financed in the early 80s, especially for, the level of budget that this required. It wasn't a massive, huge budget, but it was a very carefully allocated budget. And it definitely did take some money for things like the sets, the matte work, the special effects, all of which are done really, really well. For the silly, goofy premise that this has, there's a lot of care put into it. Visually, it's quite impressive, especially for the time. So if you aren't familiar with this movie, this is one of those weird movies, again, fairly common in the early 80s, I feel, that on paper is a kid's film. I've even seen it classified as a kid's film. I'm not sure if I agree that it is, at least not wholly. Like, I for some reason, the thing that comes to mind is something like Monster Squad, which really isn't the same thing, because Monster Squad was blatantly set up to appeal to kids, but also was rated R for some bizarre freaking reason. I understand why it got the rating. I just don't understand why it was made that way. But there is that kind of weirdness from the 80s where you have this thing where the appeal of this is obviously to kids, but the execution doesn't seem geared towards them. Not that I'm saying you have to dumb something down for kids. You don't. But there's just a lot of weirdness, and from a pacing standpoint, and the fact that it's nearly 2 hours long, you wouldn't think for kids. It's an odd film. Enjoyably odd, but it's an odd film. So we have Kevin, who is just a young boy in a house with kind of neglectful parents who are more focused on attaining the signs of prosperity, being the latest tech gadgets and things like that. Again, something that early 80s stuff in particular was very fond of doing parodies and satire on. The first Gremlins movie also had a bit of that, although it was a little bit the more home inventor stuff. But that's kind of that sort of thing is in there a bit. This idea of the next big thing, and it's such a sign that you have this cutting edge tech in your home, and it's all just garbage. But anyway, so kind of neglectful parents. He as a kid is very interested in history. He finds it fascinating and engaging, but his parents don't care. They just want him to keep quiet when he goes to bed so they can watch TV. And suddenly, there shows up in his room, well, initially that a knight in armor on a horse charges through. But then the next night, these 6 strange little men show up. And these are the titular Time Bandits. And they have stolen a map from the supreme being. It's God. Like, blatantly, it is God. They stole a map of basically holes in time. Because what they were supposed to be doing, what their job was, what their demoted job was. There's a fair bit of lore in the background of this, but it's delivered very casually, which is another thing I like. If you're gonna do lore, do it casual and don't do a lore dump on me. And this doesn't really. But the idea is like, well, we had to throw the whole universe together in 7 days. It was kind of a rushed job, and there's a bunch of holes that need patching. But we thought, what if instead of plugging the holes, we use them to jump between times and just steal all the valuables and then literally jump to a different point in time where we can't be followed. That's why they're the Time Bandits. Now, obviously, the Supreme Being, not super chill with that, or at least doesn't appear to be. There's stuff towards the end, but so they're trying to keep out of his way, and Kevin just gets caught up in all this and finds himself in with the Time Bandits. What ends up happening, at least initially, is pretty episodic, which is actually very common for early Gilliam work. You can kind of really feel his roots in more self-contained sketch stuff, because even with a lot of his early films, you can feel the segmentedness of things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something that I've noticed. It's present in Jabberwocky to an extent. It's definitely present here. It's very present in Baron Munchausen. It's even in Brazil to a certain extent. You know, there's very sectioned off, like, here's this bit. And is it moving like the overall plot forward? Yeah, kind of, but it's also just a pretty self-contained thing. It kind of has Monty Python and the Holy Grail feel, where like, there's an overall thing that we're doing, but we're going to do this for a little bit. Now we're going to do this for a little bit. Like, I actually totally get why this was adapted into a TV series, which I never saw. Apparently, it only got 1 season. I don't know what the reviews were like, but I totally get taking this premise and seeing this movie and thinking, we could expand that to a season of television. I totally see that as a vision, for sure. But what helps this a lot, honestly, is the dynamic and how just great to watch the bandits are. There are 6 of them, which arguably is more than they need, and some of them are kind of thinly sketched, but they all feel unique. The 2 big standouts for me are Randall, who's the leader. They're not supposed to have a leader, but he's clearly the leader. And Wally, who's kind of it's an odd thing to say about, you know, a group of little people, but like, he's the biggest one. And like, that's Jack Purvis, and it's David Rappaport, who's Randall, both of whom are very, you know, good actors, and unfortunately neither of whom are with us anymore. But they're kind of the real standouts, and they get highlighted, and they do extremely good work. But the whole group is good and fun. You've also got Kenny Baker there, most famous as R2-D2, playing Fidget. And actually, there's some stuff that happens towards the tail end with Fidget and Wally that, if you know the fact that Jack Purvis and Kenny Baker were not only really good friends, they had a comedy duo act for a while before either of them really got into movies, and they were like really good friends. It just adds more weight to that, and you can see that it was channeled into the performance. Really good stuff. A lot of pretty sizable cameos in this as well. Sean Connery's the big one, showing up as Agamemnon. And that one's kind of funny because Agamemnon gets like aggrandized, and like, from the perspective of Kevin, I get that. He's just kind of reading these books and he thinks like the great warrior who kills a lot of people is awesome. It's just weird seeing Agamemnon aggrandized when, by most accounts that we still have of him, he was kind of the worst. So that's kind of funny. But Sean Connery brings his presence to it, which is very fitting for what the role within the story is. You have John Cleese as Robin Hood, which is, that's a joke. Like, not just that he's playing the part, but the way Robin Hood is played is just flat out as a joke. And it's a fair enough joke. It works okay. You have these sort of recurrent characters of that are played by Michael Palin and Shelley Duvall, who are like just a very awkward couple, and we keep seeing them at different points in the timeline. Not like assuming they're immortal, but like boy, these people just keep getting reincarnated as a different kind of awkward, don't they? So that's kind of a recurring gag. David Warner as the villain who shows up, Evil. Like, that's his name, is Evil. David Warner, first of all, perfect for this. The design is so overdone in the best way, especially in some of the stuff they do with him towards the tail end and the big confrontations at the end. They did some impressive practical work with him in particular. And he is a villain, and like, he is intimidating, but he's also funny. Because like he's one of those guys who has minions that know full well that he can and will destroy them at some point, but they're not only chill with that, they're kind of excited for it to happen. So like at the tail end where he just destroys his minions because Kevin said, tell these guys to back off, and instead of Evil like dismissing everybody, he kills them all. And then immediately after killing all of his minions, which was something he did not have to do, he looks at the Time Bandits and Kevin goes, I'm a reasonable man, and I just lost it. I completely forgot that he said that line, and it's so good. It's so funny. Jim Broadbent has a little bit that comes up at a few points, which is a lot of fun. Ian Holm plays Napoleon. That's another one that, along with Agamemnon, is kind of historically iffy, because the big joke around Napoleon that they make of this is how not only how short he is, but how kind of obsessed and overcompensatory he is for the fact that he is so short, which is funny because, real life Napoleon was not significantly shorter than the average height for the time, but it was I think it was English propaganda in particular, the idea that he was short and was just overcompensating for that. But for some reason that stuck with historical depictions, and we have a freaking complex named after it, even though he was not anomalously short for the time. He was average height. But anyways, but Ian Holm, always happy to see the late great Ian Holm show up for this. And it's really well cast, and the pacing is fun. There's a couple of bits that drag on a little bit. I think the Robin Hood section is the one where I felt the most like, yeah, I get it. Although, to be fair, that might just be because I had to look at John Cleese and I didn't really want to. But there is a really fun energy to this, and I think the third act is the strongest, because that lets us really zero in and really focus on the bandits themselves, as they're trying to escape the situation that they're in. I like them a lot. They all play off each other really well. And as I said, even though Wally and Randall are the big standouts, everybody feels defined, and you still feel that camaraderie between them. So I really enjoy all that. Kevin is actually also kind of benefits from the presence of the rest of the bandits, because Kevin he's not a particularly complicated character. And whenever you have a kid that young, it's always really tricky to kind of hang a movie on him. But his main thing is to be enthusiastic and or worried about what's happening, and he does that well enough. And then with the bandits around him, they are bringing all this personality as well, and he's not distracting from them, and they are kind of buoying him. So it all kind of fits together pretty neatly, all things considered. I did wonder how the end was going to sit with me, because my memory of this has always been that the end is just kind of weird. And that's still true. Still now, I'm not real, and it's not like I follow the logistics of what happens. I just really don't understand what we're meant to take away from that. And I've looked at things people have said about it. I've looked at things that Terry Gilliam has said about it, and I'm still like, okay, but I either don't agree that what you did communicates that, or I'm asking the question, okay, why though? The big thing, so I guess spoiler for the ending. So after all this stuff goes down, and Kevin ends up back home, and it turns out his house has burned down, but there's evil was defeated and was broken into pieces, and the pieces were all gathered up, but there's one little bit of evil left, and his parents find it, and he yells at his parents, don't touch it, and they do, and they explode, and nobody else notices that. There's a weird little wink moment from a firefighter who was also played by Sean Connery, and then they just drive off, And Kevin is left like with these smoking shoes of his parents, and it's not like these were abusive parents getting their comeuppance, because like, yes, they were neglectful, they weren't good parents, but they weren't that bad. And like, he seems legit distressed by this. And I've seen Terry Gilliam say like, well, it's a be careful what you wish for thing. I'm like, okay, hold on though. Like, hold on. Be careful what you wish for worked really well for the Bandits, because like, they did all this stuff, to get these riches, and it just caused all these problems for them as they tried to do that. But they don't get punished the way Kevin does. And like, saying careful what you wish for, Kevin got swept up into this. Like, the only actual thing that he kind of expresses is that he'd rather stay with King Agamemnon than go back home, which again, I guess, is meant to indicate he doesn't really like his parents. But again, he seems distressed that they just blew up in front of him. And so, like, Kevin doesn't deserve that, for one. Other characters who probably are deserving of way more of a be careful what you wish for lesson basically get let off the hook. I don't get it. I don't get it, Terry. I don't. It just leaves it on such a weird note. And like, it's a weird movie anyway, but it was consistently weird up until that is the closing note. It's like, what is this? I still don't get it. And I really did wonder if now in my 40s, if I would get it a lot better. And like, I've seen people make the arguments like, oh, but it fits these themes. I'm like, I'm not disagreeing, but it fits those themes really uncomfortably. And like, just having that be the ending note, regardless of whether you think you can tie it into the thematics or whatever else, doesn't change the fact that it ends on a really weird note that makes me feel very strange about a movie that is otherwise largely fun. The whole thing just feels weird. It just feels weird and off, and just leaves me in not even a bad place, but just in a what the hell place. Which the rest of the movie doesn't make me feel like that. Why'd you leave me feeling like that? I don't know. But otherwise, still holds up pretty good. It's fun until the end. But anyways, have you seen this? Have you rewatched it lately? Does the ending track for you? It doesn't for me. Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. Those will help. Don't worry too much about it, though. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. Now to thank my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Jared Boyce, Zubin Lafula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Oliver B, Sean Miller, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Becky Sparks, Ulrich, Twilord, Mystic Shadow, Tracy Scrabbit, Pal Barabajoggle, Sir Didymus is my favorite, and shout-outs to some random folks from the lower tiers. Thanks to Callum Ray, 3 Muppets in a Trench Coat, and Alex Fireheart. If you want to hear me thank you by name, you can check out the reward tiers on the Patreon. You guys were pretty good today. Thank you.